All right, coming to you live. It is George Kittle Day. It's also Brock Purdy Day because anytime somebody talks about George Kittle and money and a contract, which he signed, I was up really early this morning. Hope you guys enjoyed that live. Anytime anybody talks about that, they automatically are going to pivot their attention to Brock Purdy. And they're tied at the hip, and I made something else today. We're going to come out with it tomorrow talking about Brock Purdy's contract, so stay tuned for that. I think we're going to get into some of those details here, but the 49ers offense was not the biggest problem last year. So it's great that they're doubling down on the star players. We knew that they were going to do this. We knew that the foundational pillars, especially on the offensive side of the ball, are rock solid. Everything 2 thumbs up is good. It's the defense that's needed most work for the 49ers. And as we exit the NFL draft, it is fair to ask, is the 49ers defense fixed? Or where is it in the process of getting fixed? What can the 49ers expect out of the defensive side of the ball in 2025? I talk so much about the Rams formula, and I think it's fair to invoke that again. The Rams started 3 rookies on their defense in 2024, despite the fact that this was considered one of the greatest youth movements of all time. Just 3 rookies. The 49ers might start up to 5 rookies on the defensive side of the ball. So I could illustrate it here. Yesterday, when we were in the driverless car on the way to the Warriors game, it was a little bit more difficult to show you, but I think now it's a little bit easier because we can just go straight to the screen. You don't have to deal with my filthy laptop screen this time. You can see where all the green is. Those are the rookies who are projected to start for the 49ers by me. I have my 53-man projection up on the San Francisco Standard. CJ West, Alfred Collins, Michael Williams, Nick Martin, and Upton Stout. Now, we won't necessarily see all of these guys start. This is just a projection from me. Stuff can change. Stuff will definitely evolve over the course of the offseason. But with at least those 5 picks, the 49ers saw very, very specific needs on the defensive side of the ball after really gutting that side of the ball. And they picked players who they believe have a track to be big-time contributors, if not starters, for this football team. There always is a lot of concern whenever a team is scheduled to start a lot of rookies in the NFL, and understandably so. This is a really tough league. It is a young man's league, but it's also an experienced young man's league. The teams that have that perfect mix of youth and know-how, right? Experience are the ones that are typically in their primes who are firing at all cylinders. And you'll often see old teams who are slow, who are injured, exposed, and you'll often see teams that are too young also exposed. So you want to find that sweet spot right in the middle. And the fact that the 49ers have all this green on this defensive side of the roster, I do think is something that people will be rightfully concerned about moving forward. But if we talk about the Rams last year, they had the number 28 defense over the course of the first 3 months of the year with those 3 defensive starters and other who are rookies and other rookies in that defense who did play last year, but 3 primary starters, 2 defensive linemen and a safety. They did not play well over the course of the first 3 months, but then all of a sudden, the switch flipped for the Rams, and they were great. They were downright great over the course of the last month and then into the playoffs. In fact, the 49ers caught a bad break because they got the Rams just as the switch was flipping in early December in that Thursday night game. Remember, the 49ers struggled in that game to move the ball. Then finally, Debo had a touchdown, but Debo dropped the football. That was against that vastly improved Rams defense. And I think that a lot of what we talk about is the 49ers defense fixed. I'm going to say no right now. I'm saying they have planted the seeds with these draft picks, but there's going to be real development needed for this 49ers defense to turn the corner. It's not going to be as simple as, oh, they were terrible last year, so they cut a bunch of guys and they brought in some good-looking rookies. They're going to be dominant from week 1. It's not going to be like that. in 2025. If we're truly studying the past and we're studying different formulas, and the Rams formula is obviously one that's probably most applicable to what the 49ers are doing right now. If that's how we're going to view this, then we need to also take the good and the bad and the growing pains and the tough parts of all this. And for the Rams, it wasn't just they picked Braden Fisk, they picked Jared Verse, they picked Cameron Kinchens. They had 36 rookies on this team at the start of training camp. It wasn't just that for the Rams. It was those guys came in, those guys struggled. The team found a way to weather the storm, and then things looked a lot brighter by the end of the season. So I think it's absolutely necessary to really prime minds ahead of time, because otherwise people are going to be saying, oh, well, this defense, they're still middle of the pack. It's September, it's October. What's wrong? Why is this pass defense ranked number 20? Why is the pass rush still struggling a little bit? This is going to be something that requires patience for the 49ers. Now, they truly believe that they have the right coaching staff to embrace the challenge ahead, to take an unprecedented amount of frontline rookies and turn this into a good defense. This is something the 49ers would not have been able to embark on in any good faith if somebody like Nick Sorensen was still their defensive coordinator. I would say even if Steve Wilks was the defensive coordinator. This is something that you want Robert Saleh in the building for. He needs to be able to take what I call moldable clay. I think that these rookies are all clay that needs to be molded, and he needs to apply his vision, use his assistant coaches to communicate that vision, and deliver in a way that this unit finishes off stronger than it starts. And all of that can be said really easily, but it's not going to be done really easily. This is going to be a challenge for the 49ers next year. Specifically speaking, though, we can start with San Francisco's defensive line. This is where the greatest part of the construction has happened. And there are a few things that I still have questions about regarding how they're going to run the rotations on this defensive line. I know that they picked up these rookies. I know that CJ West is a big run stopper. He's going to be a one technique type, but I think that he's got just like DJ Jones, he could play the one technique and he can also play the three technique. Alfred Collins is going to be more of your DeForest Buckner-like defensive tackle. He's going to bring the height. Mykel Williams is going to be like an Eric Armstead coming off the edge, but he also is going to slide inside on passing down. So how are the 49ers going to operate the slide inside? What kind of speed rushing presence are they going to have, if any? Or are they going to just run straight power to quarterbacks? Because Yetur Gross-Matos is going to play a lot as well. So I see 5 core defensive linemen here for the 49ers, with other guys having the opportunity to prove themselves and enter an 8-man rotation for San Francisco. But mainly Mykel Williams and Yetur Gross-Matos. Right here, this is what I'm wondering most about when it comes to how the 49ers are going to set up their rotations. We know that Mykel can push the pocket from the outside in pass rushing situations. We know that he's relatively underdeveloped, though, as a pass rusher. He still needs to work on his hand moves. He obviously saw some success on some of those stunts in games. Also saw some success rushing from the inside, which the 49ers will ask him to do more of at the NFL level. But that's also what they ask Yetur Gross-Matos to do. This past year, I mean, they picked up Yetur. He was a defensive lineman for the Carolina Panthers. They saw him as essentially an outside linebacker in the 3-4 system in Carolina, and they said, this guy could be perfect for the 4-3. We want to take his length and his athleticism inside on passing downs and work against the guards, because he's going to be able to convert some of that length to power. He's the height, the defensive end traits working inside. That's a Chris Kasarik special, right? So that was the vision for Yetur Gross-Matos. That's the vision for Mykel Williams. But what happens when they're both on the field at the same time? Because I think that that's going to happen in NASCAR packages. You're going to want to bring Yetur, work against the inside. Mykel Williams, your first round pick, you're going to want him out on that field because he's so strong and he could push the pocket backwards. You're going to want him on the inside. CJ West, Alfred Collins, I think CJ probably comes off the field in some of those NASCAR package situations. Alfred Collins with the height, even if he can't straight up beat an offensive guard in front of him, he can get his hands up there and he could choke off a lot of throwing lanes. He can make life very difficult as far as vision for an opposing quarterback. So you get an idea of who's going to play on that inside in at least one of the spots, but who's going to take the other spot and who's going to stay out on the edge. We know that they want to run Michael on the inside. We know that they love to run Eater on the inside, but not everybody could play inside. Not everybody can rush against guards. There's only a finite amount of pass rushing spots. So are they going to go speed rusher instead of Michael Williams? Is somebody like Robert Beal going to take another step? Are they going to be able to trade for a rusher, sign a rusher? Or are they just going to go power across the whole line? Like Bosa, 270. CJ West, I don't see him in there on third downs, but CJ West, 316. Alfred Collins, 332. Michael Williams, 270. Are you just going to go 270 at the lightest? And just go full-on power, no holds barred, just let that offensive line collapse. And then if it doesn't, yield clean pressures, you just tell your defensive ends and especially your tall defensive tackle, Alfred Collins, but you tell Michael Williams and Alfred Collins to get their hands up and push the pocket back as far as possible, try to bat down the pass. I think the 49ers are going to be a very power forward rush this next year. You could talk about 270-pounders like we are right now, or you could discuss the 240-pound edge rushers that seem to have taken the league by storm over the past decade or so. Dee Ford was one of them. They don't play the run particularly well, but especially in a wide nine, they have a little bit more runway to bend, to run the hoop around the offensive tackle. And if you've got a guy with that kind of speed and that kind of get off that can do that, then obviously you have him in as a pass rushing specialist in those third down or passing situations. But if you don't, if you feel that you're better with your 270-pounder on a bull rush, well, maybe you're going to lean on that a little bit more. And I think that's the way that the 49ers are setting this up as a pass rush. So when we talk about the defense improving, that's a question that's going to have to be answered. What exactly is this pass rush going to look like? What's going to be in their DNA? Somebody like Evan Anderson might also be a third down candidate. He was a really, really good pass rusher for a raw, undrafted free agent last year. If we go further into the depth, Jordan Elliott was not a good pass rusher last year. Does Jordan Elliott make this team if the 49ers believe that they need to carry a speed rusher? If they say, okay, Robert Beal's taking another step, or somebody like Robert Beal is impressing us, we need to carry him on this roster. That means that somebody probably is on the outside looking in. Is that one of the defensive tackles who the 49ers consider to be redundant? Might that be Jordan Elliott, who doesn't have much of a pass rushing presence? We know they love Kevin Givens. He's a nice Swiss Army knife for this team. Sam Okawanu is an edge that we can continue talking about, but that's more of a scrappy edge. He's a tweener too. He's got a little bit of speed, but he's a little bit on the heavier end. He's not going to be your pure speed rusher at sub 250 pounds. And then you've got Kalia Davis and Evan Anderson. I can't wait to find out what Robert Saleh and Chris Kasarik think of Kalia Davis. He's been around for a couple years. He obviously came off of the ACL tear in college. He is yet to really flash in a game for the 49ers. So I think the clock is ticking this season for somebody like Kalia, because these roster spots, the 49ers want to open auditions to as many promising defensive linemen as possible. If they think that you're out of rope, if they feel that, they're not going to get big time production out of you at any point, then they're going to have to open up a valuable roster spot to somebody else. All of this is going to be on our list of intrigue heading into training camp. How exactly will this defensive line be constructed in terms of rotations? Then we could look at linebacker, because linebacker is so important in this system. They've got to cover that extra space. They have to patrol behind the elongated wide nine. They have to be able to grab receivers in coverage. I mean, we've seen Fred Warner on CeeDee Lamb before. This is the way that the modern game works. We know that Fred is rock solid. We know that D. Winters has been making strides, but can he hold off Nick Martin? And I don't think people are talking about Nick Martin enough. You go put on the tape at Oklahoma State, and this guy flies from sideline to sideline. He's a really, really fast linebacker. I think that a lot of people were focused on Chris Pooh Paul out of Ole Miss, and they were really focused on Kane Medrano. And I think the 49ers liked both of those players. They hosted them on 30 visits, both fast linebackers. Well, fast and small, right? But the 49ers got the guy out of that group of fast and small linebackers who they feel is the most like a heat-seeking missile. They felt he was the most physical out of that group, and that is Nick Martin. So how quickly does Nick Martin pick up the playbook? How quickly can he become a force? Because all draft weekend I was talking about Nick Martin. This guy looks a lot like Malik Mustafa. He's about 10 to 12 pounds heavier. That's why he's playing linebacker and not safety. But the heat-seeking missile compliment that we're hearing from some of the guys who coached him, that's not just contrived. That's something that you actually see on tape. And it's something that the 49ers saw from Dre Greenlaw early on. And Greenlaw grabbed the starting spot right away in 2019. So how quickly is this going to happen for Nick Martin? In 2019, it was, I believe, October, right? October's when Quan Alexander tore his pectoral muscle. And that thrust Dre Greenlaw right into the thick of things at the weak side linebacker spot. And boy, was he a quick learner. Right out of bed, Dre Greenlaw had to be ready his rookie season, 5th round pick out of Arkansas. And he delivered for the 49ers. I'll still remember that interception that he had against the Seattle Seahawks. This was the first Seahawks game. The second Seahawks game was obviously the iconic one where Dre Greenlaw had the stop against Jacob Hollister at the goal line. But the first one, he intercepted Russell Wilson in the red zone in overtime, and it looked for a while like he was going to run it all the way back to the house. So, one of the loudest times that I've ever heard Levi Stadium. I mean, the place was going absolutely berserk. And it looked like the 49ers were going to win that game. And then, unfortunately, Chase McLaughlin, who's gone on to have a decent role as a starting kicker elsewhere, Chase McLaughlin was their backup kicker because Robbie Gould was hurt. And he booted it straight into the tunnel. That was the chance to win the game following the Dre Greenlaw interception and like the 50-yard return. And then, obviously, the 49ers lost because Seattle drove back the other way and they kicked the field goal themselves. But it wasn't like the 49ers lost anything in the big picture. They ended up securing the number 1 seed because Dre Greenlaw delivered against Seattle again. So that's the background. Robert Saleh was the coordinator. He had a rookie linebacker. And now the 49ers have another rookie linebacker named Nick Martin, who they can't stop comparing to Dre Greenlaw. I mean, this was one of the themes of draft weekend was John Lynch. I'm sure partially speaking for Robert Saleh. Saleh didn't have a press conference. He's going to have one coming up this next month at OTAs. Can't wait to talk to Robert for the first time since he's rejoined the 49ers. But John Lynch was saying, yeah, Nick Martin's a little bit smaller, guys, but the arm length, it's just like Dre Greenlaw's. That's why we loved him. That's what Lynch said it like 2 or 3 times this weekend, talking about the arm length for Nick Martin, which is 31.75 inches. They think that his range, because of that arm length, combined with the speed, combined with the mentality, which is probably the most important part of all of this, the run and hit mentality, they think that this guy is going to be able to replicate some of what Dre Greenlaw did. So we'll see how quickly. Greenlaw started as the number 3 linebacker behind Quan Alexander and Warner in 2019. Moved right up to that weak side spot after Quan got hurt. We'll see what the dynamics are with Nick Martin. Is he going to start behind D. Winters? They also have an undrafted free agent who some people think this is going to be the steal of the draft. His name is Stone Blanton out of Mississippi State. The guy's an absolute tackling machine. 124 tackles last year for the Aggies of Mississippi State. Stone Blanton added to the roster. So you look at the linebacker position beyond the starters. Tatum Bethune's going to have a chance to compete, prove himself in the second year. Don't discount him. I mean, that guy, he was a really solid player at Florida State. Luke Gifford is really fast, but I think he's on this roster more for a reserve spot and for special teams. And then there's Jalen Graham, who's probably going to be on the hot seat this year because you've got Bethune trying to make a second-year stride. Graham's already been cut by the 49ers, but he came back. So I don't think that they're particularly attached to him. I think that they like him, but I think if they could continue raising the ceiling of this room, raising the floor of this room Both things can be on the up and up. He might be the first one pushed out of this 53-man roster picture. So Bethune, Graham will both be competing here in this kind of second wave of linebackers. And then you've got Stone Blanton, Deshaun White, and we'll see where Curtis Robinson comes back from his ACL. But as the linebackers go, so will the 49ers defense. I mean, this team is so reliant on good linebacker play. I think people need to sit back and realize how big of a loss Dre Greenlaw's injury was to the 49ers at the Super Bowl. They were completely shutting down Patrick Mahomes. This was like the past Super Bowl. This was like the Eagles against the Kansas City Chiefs over the course of the first quarter until Greenlaw was running onto the field and his Achilles snapped. From that point onward, the Chiefs found a rhythm. I think even I myself have underestimated the importance of defense at the linebacker level for the 49ers. I always thought, okay, they've got a good guy in Fred Warner. And, as long as you've got good guys around him and the pass rush is okay, this team is going to succeed defensively. No, I mean, linebacker is the heart and soul of this defense. And Warner and Greenlaw were the two best in football. That duo was the best in football for the 49ers. And we saw the difference when you had them and when you didn't in the Super Bowl. And then you saw a lot of it in the season during 2025. This team was bad defensively in 2025. I talk about it all the time. I talk about the poor run defense numbers. I talk about the fact that they weren't. The pass rush just never was in position to do what it needed to do. Here's a good stat for you. 3rd and 5 in the NFL, offenses have 46% conversion rates across the board of all 3rd and 5s that NFL teams run. 3rd and 7, that conversion rate drops to 36%. That's a huge difference in a league of small margins. So 2 yards is a 10% difference in conversion rate from 36 to 46%. So you'd rather have the team in 3rd and 7 than 3rd and 5 by a long shot. But if your run defense is as bad as the 49ers run defense was last year, if it ranks number 29, you're going to be faced with a lot more 3rd and 5s than 3rd and 7s. Because if you can, it's not that hard to run for 5 yards and 2 downs against a defense. So that sets you up with 3rd and 5 against the bad run defense. That sets you up with 3rd and 5. And if the conversion rate there against the average NFL defense is 46%, against the 49ers defense, I think it was even greater. The opponents are going over 50% on 3rd down. All they have to do is run 5 yards in 2 downs against the number 29 run defense, and they're set up in 3rd and manageable. There's way too much 3rd and manageable, and it was because the 49ers didn't have great linebacker play last year. I think primarily, there's obviously a confluence of factors, but I think the fact that Fred Warner was on an island for a lot of that season, Devondre Campbell was not a very good player for the 49ers. The fact that Fred Warner, while on the island, had to play with a broken foot, these were all massive problems for the 49ers. So that's why we talk about, is this defense improving? Well, Nick Martin has a big job. Somebody like Stone Blanton has a big opportunity. D. Winters needs to take that next step. I think a healthy Fred Warner helps you this year. Fred Warner not playing on a broken foot is a good thing for the 49ers, but I will never underestimate the importance of the linebacker position again. I think that it is absolutely critical in this 49ers defensive setup. And you know what? Robert Saleh is a former linebackers coach. He's the guy that oversaw the development of Warner and of Greenlaw. They brought in Quan Alexander to help with that early in those guys' careers. Saleh went from linebackers coach in Jacksonville to the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. So it is no coincidence that that is the unit that binds everything together for San Francisco. All right. So the secondary, the 49ers have really, really retooled this year. And I find the secondary to be the most intriguing mix of rookies and veterans on this team. There are position groups like the tight end room that the 49ers haven't touched at all, right? That's all veterans, no rookies added. Then there are other rooms like the defensive line room where the 49ers have only added rookies, CJ West, Alfred Collins, Michael Williams, and Sebastian Valdez, who's the undrafted free agent defensive tackle out of Washington. And then there's a room like the secondary, the DB room, where the 49ers have added a very, very intriguing mix of free agents and rookies. The free agents right here are shaded in teal. The rookies are shaded in green. So Deommodore Lenoir is the ringleader here, right? Unfortunately, the other potential ringleader of the season, Malik Mustafa, is hurt right now. He tore his ACL on January 5th. So you may not have Mustafa. You probably won't have Mustafa to begin the season. That's a tough break for the 49ers. But because of that, they did sign a couple safeties with starting experience, Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant. They then drafted a cornerback, a nickelback, Upton Stout, and a safety who can play nickelback because he's got cornerback history. He played cornerback at North Dakota State before he transferred to Kansas State, Marquise Siegel. Upton Stout and Marquise Siegel are two superlative athletes in different ways. Upton Stout put up the most bench press reps of any DB at the combine, even though he's 5'8", 180. People need to realize how hard this is at that weight. He put up 225 bench press reps. So the guy's an absolute dog. He's strong. I think he's cut out to play in the grimy confines of slot cornerback. Then you've got Marquise Siegel, who also had a superlative at the NFL Combine. His time at the 5-yard mark of the 40-yard dash, or his speed, 15.74 miles per hour, was the fastest of any player at the Combine. And there were some fast guys at the NFL Combine this year. So between the two rookie additions, the 49ers have a couple really special athletic traits. Upton Stout, really strong for how slight a frame he is. It's a combination you don't often see. Somebody that frame winning the bench press competition at the Combine. And Marquise Siegel, somebody that's extremely fast. Probably one of the best accelerators in the NFL, because 15.74 miles per hour at the 5-yard mark is just absolutely absurd to me. So you got those two guys. How will they plug in? You know that you're good at the front line of corner on the outside with Deommodore Lenoir and Renardo Green. In a pinch, if Upton Stout can't get the job done at nickelback, Deommodore Lenoir can move into the nickelback position, and Trey Brown, who I think is a solid corner 49ers picked up from the Seahawks, can slide in and be the third guy on the outside while Lenoir is inside on passing downs. The 49ers set themselves up with a fallback option before the draft even started. But the draft gave them a very, very intriguing potential luxury. If Upton Stout is able to deliver, Deommodore Lenoir can stay outside and Trey Brown could be cornerback depth for this team. If that happens, the 49ers all of a sudden look much deeper and much more robust than they did just about a week ago. Safety is an entirely different ball game just because of the Mustafa injury. We'll see if Pinnock or Grant, Pinnock, who actually played under Robert Saleh with the New York Jets, the Jets were the first team to pick him up. We'll see if Pinnock fits the bill for the 49ers to fill in for Mustafa. I think that Pinnock and Grant are going to get an earlier look at this than Marquise Siegel, the rookie, as Siegel learns the ropes of the NFL. But Siegel can be waiting in the wings. So, one thing that was devastating for the 49ers early last year was safety depth early on. When Malik Mustafa was still a rookie. He wasn't starting yet, but Talanoa Hufanga wasn't healthy at the start of the season, still coming back. It was Jair Brown and George Odom. They had big-time problems on the back end covering at safety. And I think the 49ers said, never again. We need to insulate safety. Then when Malik got hurt on January 5th in that season finale, they said, okay, we're going to sign two of these guys. We're going to sign two guys with starting experience, and we're going to draft one. The 49ers kept it hidden that Malik Mustafa tore his ACL until after the draft. You don't have to report injuries if you're not playing a game, right? And this was happening in the season finale. And the reason they kept it hidden is because they wanted to draft a safety. It looks like Marquise Siegel's the guy that they wanted. And if they had let it be known that Malik Mustafa has torn his ACL, I think that teams might start sniffing that they would draft a safety. And that could have knocked the 49ers out of position to grab Marquise Siegel. Everybody knew that the 49ers wanted an offensive tackle, and that might have hurt the 49ers at the end of the third round, right? When Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant went in consecutive picks to the Raiders right ahead of the 49ers pick at number 100. That was 98, 99, and 100. So you want to keep your draft plans close to the vest. 49ers definitely did by not letting anybody know that Malik Mustafa had torn his ACL until after the draft. So there, I think, is a definite sense coming from the 49ers building that Marquise Siegel might be needed at this safety position this year to help bridge the gap for the 49ers. And he has the type of speed and the type of athletic profile and the type of play profile, the small kind of cannonball, just like the other guys the 49ers added, Nick Martin, Upton Stout, and Malik Mustafa the year before. He has that type of profile to make some waves on this defense if he can be developed. I'm going to go back to that, and this is why the 49ers have the all-star coaching staff. This is why Robert Saleh is back aboard. Development is king. The 49ers, with a Sorensen staff, with a Wilkes staff, I wouldn't have seen it coming. I would have just said, okay, this defense, I don't know if the 49ers have the coaching personnel in place to have really high hopes. But Robert Saleh built this defense from the ground up in 2017, and now he's got a lot more talent than he did back then. And I think that this gives the 49ers reason to believe that, like the Rams last season, they can turn the corner at some point in 2025 when the time is right. Now, until that happens, it's going to be up to the 49ers offense to carry the load. And I think the offense is more than capable. Ultimately, this season comes down to the health of Christian McCaffrey, the health of Trent Williams, because regardless of who you have behind those guys, they're such good players, future Hall of Famers. If they get hurt, if they're unavailable, the team gets a whole lot worse. And the 49ers are going to need a lot of offensive efficiency to make up for some of the slack, I think, that will be produced by the defense early on as some of these rookies cut their teeth. Ryan says Saleh has his weapons. Now pay Brock and let's go. Well, you guys are going to love the video that comes out tomorrow morning. Andre asks, do you feel that the Niners came into this draft to go heavy on the D, knowing they might be able to get away for one more year with this O-line, seeing this year's schedule and focus on the offense in next year's draft? I don't think this had anything to do with the schedule, but I think that you're on to something when you talk about your overarching theory there. I think that the offensive line along the front line is totally workable. It's totally fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. Frontline guys returning. You're going to help for better health from Trent Williams. That's great. It's the multi-year plan of the offensive line that concerns me, because Colton McKibbs is only under contract for one more year. Trent Williams is going to be 37 years old. That's something that somehow, some way, the 49ers are going to have to address. But because the short term is not a panic button situation, because they only technically need depth in the short term. They signed DJ Humphries today, and the defensive needs were more acute. Yes, the 49ers prioritized defense in this NFL draft. I think they still wanted to get a developmental tackle, but the fact that Charles Grant might have been the guy whom the 49ers wanted, but he went to the Raiders instead, that tells you that the tackle that they were going to pick this year was not going to be expected to start this year. Charles Grant still has a lot of work to do. He's coming out of a small school, William and Mary. So the 49ers were thinking, okay, developmental offensive lineman, if we can get one this year, but we don't necessarily need that starting tackle at all costs. They needed their defensive line at all costs. They needed Nick Martin, the linebacker, at all costs. They might have needed Marquise Siegel to fill in for Malik Mustafa at all costs. Those were the more desperate times for the 49ers, the more desperate positions. So yes, to answer the question, I do think that the game that they did play is we got to address the biggest weakness now. We can go heavy on the offense next year, but you're still going to have to bridge that gap when it comes to depth along the offensive line this season. And I think the DJ Humphries signing was one step in that direction. Live stream is going hard today. This is a really casual one. Just wanted to get you guys in a position where you could ask some questions and we can go from there. So good questions would be appreciated. Bo says that he's fine with Colton McKibbs. At least he stays healthy. McKibbs was an average tackle this past season. I thought that he was a below average tackle in 2023, but I thought he got a lot better in 2024. I'm not saying he's great, but he definitely wasn't terrible. And the quicker that people realize that, the better their mental health will be. I thought that they were below average at center, and I thought they were below average at left guard. And I think that losing Aaron Banks might be addition by subtraction for the 49ers at left guard because Ben Barch was playing better football than him. Center, well, you theorize if they're better at left guard and if Dominic Pooney takes another step, center's a little bit more protected. I personally, given my experience covering these Shanahan offenses, I think that center is extremely important, and that's a position that I would actually invest more money in. They've seen some of their best pass protection when investing money in Weston Richburg, when investing money in Alex Mack. Obviously, something the 49ers didn't do. We wondered if they'd be interested in Drew Dahlman, but what he ended up making, like 17, 18, 19 million per year. So that obviously was a long shot at that price, you know, something closer to 12, 13 million per year, where the center market used to be, would have made a whole lot more sense. But obviously that's not the direction that it went. But yes, McKibbs, I think, has gone from, a player who was a liability for the 49ers at right tackle. There were times in 2023 when it was really bad, the whole right side of the line with Burford and McKibbs. He's gone from that to, I think, being an underrated player for San Francisco on the right side. Bo asking, maybe Hennessy wins out. Unless the 49ers are deking everybody, I'm not really buying the Hennessy chances because Kyle Shanahan even said that this guy might be competing at guard more than he is at center. And, that surprised me because Hennessy has played some guard, but it seemed to me that he was a center first and foremost when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. He was the predecessor to Drew Dahlman, right? So it doesn't make sense to me that all of a sudden they'd want to pigeonhole him at guard, especially since Jake Brendel, I don't think, is playing his best football, and Jake Brendel is getting older. I think we shouldn't forget about Drake Nugent, who the 49ers are trying to develop right now at the center position. I mean, I could open up the depth chart to kind of illustrate what's going on at this position for you guys. And, another player who we definitely shouldn't rule out is Nick Zakelj. Nick I remember when he was coming out of Fordham in 2022. This was the Brock Purdy year. They're roommates, right? Zakelj and Brock Purdy were roommates before Brock got married. So I think Brock is in his own place now. He's married, and Nick Zakelj and Alfredo Gutierrez are no longer his roommates. But Nick, when he came out of Fordham, I talked to one of his coaches, and the quote that resonated to me was, he takes people over mentally. If you could take people over mentally, you might be cut out for the center role. And the first thing the 49ers said when Nick Zakelj stepped into the facility back in 2022 was, this guy might be able to play center down the road. Nick Zakelj didn't give up a single pressure, or maybe one pressure. He was really good over his spot starting at guard to end last season. So when you look at him, he's developed as a pass blocker. I think the run blocking still leaves something to be desired, but they love his mind. Can he push for that center job? Might he be thrust into the center job? Jake Brendel has been dealing with knee tendonitis. That was an issue last offseason. So don't rule out Zakelj, who's also going to be competing for left guard. Maybe rule out Hennessy, maybe not, but the messaging there from the 49ers has been odd. And don't forget about Drake Nugent at that center position. Then there's Drew Moss. I haven't even talked about Connor Colby in this video yet. I know I've made dedicated videos on Colby, but Connor Colby and Drew Moss is the undrafted free agent out of Colorado State. He's a good run blocker. Moss and Colby are both excellent in space. They got two guys who can be guards for this team. I'm not sure about their center availability and ability, and that's something I'll have to check in with Chris Furster and with Kyle Shanahan. But at the very least, you'll have a crowded competition for the left guard spot. Dominic Pooney's your right guard. And then you could let the best of the rest go for that center position, or at least the backup center position for the 49ers. And now you have DJ Humphries in the mix as well. You know, Humphries playing tackle. I think Burford is more of a tackle than a guard, to be honest. Burford struggled so much at right guard. But we'll see where he competes during training camp. Since Humphries is here, does Burford still continue to compete at tackle, or does he move in and take some reps for the 49ers at guard? Going to be fascinating. Wow, Zach comes through. Thank you, Zach. This is awesome. You know, this kind of stuff means a lot when you sit here grinding, and you guys mean a lot. We had over 1 million combined viewers over the extended draft weekend. Mike and I just added it up. Over the draft itself, it was 980,000. But if you include the day of undrafted free agency after, kind of the warm down after the draft, over 1 million of you tuned in and watched this YouTube channel. There's never been anything like it in 49ers coverage before. Anyway, Zach, you are awesome. Thank you for that. Let me see what you're asking here. No way did the 49ers want to do anything short of rehaul that defense. And it certainly seems they made some good moves to do that. 49ers offense should look a whole lot better this year than last year anyway. I'm stoked to see where they go. Zach is really level-headed. What a guy. This is awesome. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. Yes, why wouldn't you want to rehaul a defense that finished with embarrassing football? I mean, they got embarrassed against Detroit, and I kind of got it against Detroit because that was a high-powered offense. But then they got absolutely thrashed by the Arizona Cardinals. And this is after Devondre Campbell walked out on the team earlier in December against the Rams. But it was bad, and the numbers were bad. And it's like, what are we doing here? Why do they have rental veterans? I know why they signed the rental veterans like Malik Collins, like Leonard Floyd, because they were hoping to carry over some of the success from the year prior and Band-Aid things together for long enough to make another run at it. But after the season, and even during the season, once it became very apparent that Band-Aiding was not going to be feasible, wasn't going to happen, rip off the Band-Aid. Get those guys out. They can go sign for more money elsewhere. It's fine. Their value to the 49ers was definitely not as great as it was to some other teams. Good guys in the locker room, might have been good fits for the team at a different time, but not for 2025. This was the time to open things up for rookies, to overall things, because you know what? Even if you are worried about rookie growing pains, there's nowhere to go but up for this defense. You're not getting much worse than number 29 run defense. They're I think they finished number 26 as an overall defense. You're not getting much worse than that. There are only 32 teams. So if there's ever a chance to go for a youth movement without a whole lot of damage, it's now. Because even if they struggle, like the Rams, what did I say? They were number 26, 27, 28 over the first 3 months defensively. The Rams over the first 3 months of last season basically finished the same rank as the 49ers did last year. But then the Rams, because they were young, turned it around over the course of the last month. They turned on the Jets. So that's the strategy for the 49ers. Really big thanks to Zach. That is awesome. Which prospect excites me the most from this class that may have the highest ceiling? From Andre. Another good question. Thank you. Well, out of the undrafted free agents, I'd have to say Isaiah Nair over here at wide receiver. Dane Brugler said that he might be the most gifted athlete in this entire draft class. He's 6'4", 220, runs a 4.40. I mean, the guy is a complete specimen. So Isaiah Nair might excite me from an athletic standpoint. To me, the guy that moves the needle the most is Upton Stout. And maybe it's his personality that is jumping out at me, but I think personality is really important in these things. I know that he can bench press 21 reps. That's tied to personality as well. The guy says, screw it. I don't care that I'm 580, 180 pounds. I'm going to go bench more than everybody else at my position at the NFL Combine. That's just the way that this guy's wired. And if he plays football, anything like the way that he was wired for the bench press, which he does, I mean, the guy just runs through people. He's in the backfield. He's blowing people up. If he plays football the way that he talks, 1,000,000 miles a minute, then he's going to be a fun watch. He's going to be one of those guys that energizes a defense. He's built like Deommodore Lenoir in terms of how he's wired. So Upton Stout, maybe I'm being fooled by his personality, by the name. He's got a Hall of Fame name. But boy, I think that he's got some real potential to surprise on that defensive side of the ball. Because a lot of people look at him and they say, oh, he's a little too small. But the Heart of a Lion thing that came from Warren Ball, who was a scout who discovered him out of Western Kentucky, the Heart of a Lion thing might be real with Upton Stout. I have relayed this story a couple times. Jim Harbaugh wanted Upton at Michigan. He wanted him to transfer, but then Jim left to the Chargers. We were visiting with Jim for quite a while at the NFL owners meetings earlier this month. And I wish I would have known who the 49ers had drafted, because if I could have asked Jim during that conversation about Upton Stout, I absolutely would have. I mean, the guy is built differently, at least from a mental standpoint, but I do think that's going to serve him well at the NFL level. All right, guys, we got a big video coming up tomorrow morning. Stay tuned. Brock Purdy signing tomorrow morning? I'm just teasing you guys. I don't think it's going to, well, I don't know. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. We kind of predicted the George Kittle thing, right? It was very, very close to happening as we were talking about it over the course of this weekend. But we got a big article on the Purdy front coming tomorrow morning. And everybody, you should hit the subscribe button. It's been great having you aboard. This was fun. A little impromptu Q&A. Happy we did it. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning with the big video. Set your alarm bells, hit the subscribe button, do all that good stuff. And while you're at it, you know, the San Francisco Standard has the best 49ers coverage out there. You should go ahead and sign up for the Standard. I'll toss this into the description, but George Kittle signed earlier today. Brock Purdy, will he be next? Maybe. And on top of the George Kittle news, we have our first 49ers 53-man roster projection up on the Standard. A lot of people have read it. If you haven't read it yet, I think you need to go do that right now. All right, thanks for joining. We will talk to everybody soon. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for the comments. It's been a fun Q&A. Good night.